Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's Jack and Anas as always. We hope that you are all doing well, and let's kick this off. How are you, Jack?
I'm doing well, Ellis. Thanks as always. Thanks everyone for coming into our world. Hope you have a good time.
Absolutely. We have a lot to discuss, like in terms of exciting news and stuff. Obviously, there have been a lot of leaks when it comes to Avengers Doomsday, but we'll not
Hmm.
talk about that.
Let's
I've
save
seen
that.
them. I'm not gonna talk about it to not spoil it for people, but
Yeah.
let's say that I'm excited and move on when it comes to Doomsday. And so, speaking of like Doomsday, we can talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day since we've
Okay.
got the second trailer as well as some revelations. So
Yeah.
let's kick this off. Where do you want to take this discussion?
Well, let's first start off with the trailer did confirm most of what we had expected. So, there were some leaks, like there were some like descriptions of people who had seen the trailer. Of course, there was I think like about a week ago, there were a whole bunch of takedown notices from Sony. So it was up briefly, then it was just taken down, and I think they finally released it. And the part that I think that I don't remember from the descriptions was that last part with MJ, where Peter convinces MJ to come with him to trust him. That kind of I think that's revealing because it does sort of let me like I had a theory that he was going to have to he was at some point he was going to have to confront MJ and Ned while fighting the Hand or whoever he's fighting, and it's because of that they're going to try that's going to be what they're going to try to remember. Something they're going to try to do something to help MJ and Ned remember who he is. Now, of course, my theory is, and my hope is that if Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey, and she is actually marketing the movie with them, she's the fourth member of the team, which is you don't do that unless you're playing someone important. Like if she's the one who unlocks their memories, then I think that lends credence to the theory that she's playing Jean Grey, she's playing a psychic. There are very few characters who have the psychic ability to undo a spell from Doctor Strange, and Jean Grey is one of the very few who can do that. And the other parts again, we saw the hints of him developing like organic web shooters. We saw that scene that was more laid out. We also had him talk to the Hulk. We also got another thunderclap from the Hulk, something we haven't gotten since the original Incredible Hulk, which I thought was so much fun. We did see
Yep.
Gray Hulk. I don't know if I know that was something that was in the description before. And I don't think we saw it this time, but
Yeah.
we know he's going to go Hulk again, and we also saw the Punisher. But another thing that everyone's now debating is what parts of the trailer. I want to open this up to you. What parts of the trailer do you think are kind of edited? Because I know if you watch the old No Way Home trailer, there's a scene where they edited out Toby and Andrew Garfield.
Yep.
So they literally like scrubbed that out with Photoshop. I think that there's something in this new trailer that is definitely edited. I think there's a tank scene. I think someone's next to the Punisher. I think Jean or Sadie's character is going to be next to him, and
Yep.
we're not going to. They're trying to. They're really going out of their way to hide Sadie, and I can't imagine her keeping the secret is easy. What do you
Yep.
think?
I think that when it comes to the trailers, like obviously they always hide stuff. Even like the most famous example would be the Infinity War trailer having the
Yes,
Hulk in Wakanda, but then
hmm
you have Hulk replaced by the Iron
Hulkbuster.
Man armor.
Yeah.
Yes, the Hulkbuster armor. So they always like change stuff. From the leak, I remember that the scene they were talking about with Grey Hulk is actually edited or shown in the official trailer with
hmm
Hulk being green.
hmm
It's the scene of the transformation and the clap.
Interesting. Yeah, that that
Yes.
that could that could happen. Yeah. So maybe they did. They're switching things up because
Mhm.
we've seen in other comics, both I think there was a First Class issue, we've seen it in Ultimate, that Jean Grey can, break through the Hulk's, into his human side. She can do that. It's not
Yeah.
a permanent fix, but it's like one of those, it's like a temporary connection, so to speak. And
Yeah.
she's one of the very few people who can do that with the Hulk.
Especially like with what they're trying to do with the Hulk, with the fact that they're probably gonna introduce the element of dissociative identity disorder, which
Mhm.
it has like because I think that for a long time when the comics they have been debating whether this was a side effect of like Bruce's transformation and power, or
Mhm.
was it like psychological trauma due to
Mhm.
being abused as a child.
Mhm.
And like most recently, they have leaned more towards the idea that he was just abused as a child. So he always had the ID,
Mhm.
but it was like it didn't manifest the way like that anyone can notice it,
Mhm.
except like after the transformation.
Yeah.
I think that, that like the most recent example I can remember with that being explored was during the Al Ewing Immortal Hulk run with Joe Fixit. Ironically,
Mhm.
like
Yeah, Joe
the
Fixer.
Gray Hulk.
Yeah.
He is
They
the
have
Gray
yeah.
Hulk. Yeah,
Yeah. They haven't really introduced that element of Hulk yet. They haven't have like the Joe Fixit or the Gray Hulk at all. So maybe there's another subplot going on because
yeah.
maybe it has to do with the bodies jumping. There's people say it might be Jean, but that also could be the Jackal.
Maybe. I mean, like, as I said, like, it has been a debate for a long time whether it's related to his powers or, his psychology as a child. But, either way, it can be interesting, especially like as now we have introduced multiple Hulks in the MCU. And of
Mhm.
course, all of the issues with Hulk come down to the fact that you can do Hulk movies, but you can do movies with the Hulk as well as
Mhm.
shows. And, when you do
Yeah,
shows,
we saw that.
regardless of how much you spend on them, they will never look good, especially
Mhm.
like on TV budget. I'm sorry, like,
Mhm.
there are elements of She-Hulk that I enjoyed and elements that I didn't, but the CGI was bad, and it's not like related to anything other than that they need budget, and
Mhm.
that's a TV show. So
Yeah. You do have to stretch your every dollar a little bit more with a TV show. That's just
yep.
the nature of the medium.
Yeah, I remember like when Agents of Shield was coming out, like season 4, and they were like, I can't remember who exactly said it, but one of the people working on the show, and they were like, we had this certain budget that we know how to deal with, but then when it came to Ghost Rider, we had to do the math all over again because, like, with Ghost Rider just appearing for a couple of seconds, that costs
Yeah,
budget on
that's
its
a
own,
lot of CGI. Yeah.
and Hulk is the same. That's why for a long time you always see like movies tend to do like fight scenes in at night and whatnot because that reduces the budget cost in a
Mhm.
sense. When having dark scenes,
Mhm.
including the first Hulk movie, like
Yeah,
the MCU Hulk.
that makes sense. Yeah, that does.
So
And yeah.
yeah,
Anything else on with what do you think if Hulk is kind of like playing a Joe Fixit type character? Do you think that could somehow link him that'll help tie him into Doomsday? Because correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Hulk gonna is he been confirmed for Doomsday?
he hasn't, but the thing is that remember like a couple of years back, there has
Yeah.
been like major art leak from Marvel,
Hmm.
like concept art, and the concept art was related to multiple projects, including Doomsday, Secret Wars, and Vision Quest.
Okay.
And some of it did include Hulk and She-Hulk in
Okay.
a battle world scenario. So would that be in Doomsday or Secret Wars, or was that scrapped?
Hmm.
Because a lot of the concept art ideas end up being scrapped depending on like the movie directions. But we'll see how it
Makes
goes.
sense. Okay.
And we don't know. Like I know we have most of the cast known when it comes to Avengers Doomsday, but we don't know the whole cast. Most
Yeah.
people still think, or according to even some quote unquote leaks, that I don't know if they're legit or not, but Hugh Jackman and Deadpool, we are
Yeah.
talking about Spider
I
Man to
saw
some
those too.
extent. We know that Sadie Sink is coming back for Secret Wars, but
Yeah.
is she in
Maybe
Doomsday?
probably not.
So like you have to like give this thing a room to breathe, especially like as we're gonna discuss later on, like with other projects, everything leads to Secret Wars. So
Mhm.
even if they don't appear in Doomsday, that's not an issue because they're just leading to the finale and
Mhm.
everyone will be in the finale,
Yeah.
especially as a new beginning,
Yeah.
as we've discussed in the previous stream, like the idea of Doomsday and Secret Wars when it comes to X-Men specifically is similar to Days of Future Past, whereas
Hmm.
like Doomsday mainly will be like the goodbye to the original cast
Hmm.
and the universe, whereas with Secret Wars you're gonna introduce the new team.
Yeah. Rebirth. Like
Yes, it's Days of Future Past 2.0 since they
yeah.
technically did that in the movie, but
Yeah. We
and
remember, yeah. They
yeah,
hid they hid the ending to Days of Future Past fairly well from what I remember. It did that ending, I don't think it didn't leak till like a week before the movie came out.
yeah, that's like I think at that time it was crazy to leak stuff because leaks weren't, that known.
Hmm.
I think that after Endgame, leaks became something else
Yes.
entirely. Like
Yeah.
so we have that when it comes to the X-Men.
Hmm.
We also don't know like what the future holds for other characters. Like
Hmm.
as we have discussed in previous streams, we know that Chris Evans is back for Secret Wars.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
I saw that.
we will see what else is in store for him,
Hmm.
considering that, he can still play Steve Rogers, even if he is not, the main Captain America for a long time. You always
Hmm.
want to bank on Chris Evans,
Yeah,
similar to Sebastian Stan, he's not done with the character at this
he keeps
moment.
coming
So,
back. Yeah, he wouldn't
yep,
keep coming back if he hated it. But so
yep.
yeah, and there's
Same
one.
with Hemsworth.
Yeah, yeah. There's sorry to go ahead and
Nurse.
complete your thought. I did have another thing about the trailer I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, no, that's it really. Like, I was just counting down characters or
Yeah.
actors who would return, and it's most of them.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo, I think, is the oldest guy who still wants to return. He wants to play, like, he's passionate about Hulk, and he's one of the people that has voiced being sad about never doing a movie because of Universal.
Yeah, it definitely shows how much he loves the character. And before I get on, I want to get back to my point. I want to note, I doubt that they've announced all the characters in Doomsday. I'd be very shocked if there weren't at least some things they're keeping under wraps. Because for something like this, they're going to want to try to. I feel like they're going to try to play a few things close to the chest. I mean, remember how long it took? They hid Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back. They hid that till the absolute last minute. I think they're going to do something similar with Doomsday. Now, what form that takes, I don't know. Maybe they're going to have um, uh, maybe they'll have another version of Iron Man for all we know. I mean, I don't think they could hide Tom Cruise because he was supposed to play Iron Man in 2003.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
think 2008 he was one of the candidates for the MCU's Iron
yeah,
Man.
yeah, and I don't know if they could hide something like that, but I think they're going to do something. Whether it's with Hugh Jackman, whether they're going to try to get Sean Ashmore back for he played Iceman,
Yeah,
or yeah, I know Famke Janssen has said publicly she hasn't been asked, but I'm not entirely. Maybe she remember Andrew Garfield lied a lot before he showed up.
yeah. Chris
And
Claremont. Does anyone
yeah,
remember the interview from a couple of months ago?
man, Claremont he's a fun guy to talk to. You never know if he's being serious, but he's coy. He's one of he's despite his age. Every time I've met him, he talks like a fan, like he's us right
Yeah,
now. And it's
he's
like
a smart guy.
yeah. So yeah, it's fun to think what they'll hold. But the other one I really want to highlight from this trailer, because we didn't really see it in the first trailer, is the character played by Tremel Tillman. William Metzger. Am I saying that right? William Metzger.
I'm not sure. We'll see how it's pronounced
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah. I don't know how it's pronounced, but if you know what if you know who the comics, he's an X-Men villain, plain and simple. He is not a Spider-Man villain. He's never really played a single part in a Spider-Man comic, but he is an X-Men villain through and through. But here he's essentially playing, I think he's the head of damage control, or yeah. I think I think that's not an accident that they're bringing in someone who isn't an outright X-Men villain with all these rumors about Sadie Sink playing Jean Grey, because I think they've been kind of building up, like we've talked about this in previous streams. Damage control is sort of being built up as a much more antagonistic force. Like we saw in Daredevil Born Again, they have the anti-vigilante task force, which is kind of like, I feel like that's what damage control wishes they could be. I think that's what damage control is trying to eventually become, and maybe they're going to try to they tried to do that in No Way Home. You saw when they interrogated Peter, May,
Yeah,
MJ, and Ned. They
and
were
later Miss Marvel
and Miss Marvel as well. So they have been
and
yeah,
Wonder Man. Sorry to cut
yeah,
you off. Wonder
yeah.
Man as well.
You're right. Yeah, they've been trying to exert themselves, but this is the first time we've got like a name from the comics. William Metzger is from the comics, and the idea of putting him on the side of damage control, he could be. I don't know if you remember in Wolverine and the X-Men, they had the Mutant Response Division. They called them Martys. The comics, they've had Orcus. There have been all sorts of these anti-mutant divisions throughout comics, movies, TV shows, the whole thing. But I think having something like damage control become the future task force against mutants, I think
Yeah.
that's something I really want to see fleshed out in this movie. It's probably maybe something that'll be set up for future MCU movies. I know I do want to talk about what the MCU X-Men should be later on. But for
Yeah.
this one in particular, I think Metzger has, I think, and what damage control is going to do, he's got two issues. One, you've got this Sadie Sink's character is obviously extremely powerful. We saw in the first trailer, they apparently do capture her. They have her locked in this room. She's strapped down, and that just shows you how dangerous it is, but it also shows you they're not being very accommodating and very understanding, which if you've read any X-Men comics, you know all these anti-mutant organizations aren't very kind and they don't show much in terms of hospitality, to say
Yeah.
the very least. And I think emphasizing that element of damage control is going to be important because for any future X-Men story to work, and also heroes like Miss Marvel, for them to work, they need to become more antagonists. We've seen them, they've been trying to raise their profile with Miss Marvel and with No Way Home. But maybe this is the movie where in Brand New Day they take a huge leap, and it'll be maybe like we haven't heard the name William Metzger yet. I
No, we haven't.
swear. So he might be the one who makes the move. So what do you think?
I mean, I'm waiting and seeing. So for me, the promise of a consistent universe is what I care about. And at the moment, that's what they're aiming towards,
Uh-huh.
especially like with the directors. So we have
Uh,
Daniel Cretton or Destin Daniel Cretton,
uh-huh.
the director of Spider-Man. He directed Shang-Chi before. He's
Uh-huh.
directing Wonder Man season 1 and 2, which are focused heavily
Uh-huh.
on damage control.
Uh-huh.
And we had like he is picking up the threads of obviously from No Way Home and Ms. Marvel, but like he is also doing his own thing, especially
Uh-huh.
like as we have seen in Wonder Man, he's taken like the past plots of Iron Man and like folding him into the future of the MCU and damage control and what damage control is.
Mm-hmm. And what they could
So
be.
yes, and we know for a fact that Daniel is not done with the MCU. So he
Mm-hmm.
came out recently. He said that Shang-Chi is still in development under him. So it will
Uh-huh.
be one of the movies that comes out that is confirmed, like Marvel is working on to come
Mm-hmm.
out after Secret Wars. We also have the X-Men and Black Panther being worked on,
Mm-hmm.
and the rumor out right now is that they will start the pre-production phase for both of these movies by the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've seen that too, and I have a feel. I think we'll get something more official in San Diego next month is when it's happening. So that's
Yeah, or
coming
maybe
up.
New York, or
Yeah.
maybe New York Comic Con. Since by the
Mm,
time New York Comic Con comes out, you basically don't know anything except for Daredevil season 3,
uh,
Vision Quest, and Secret Wars. And
uh,
I'm gonna bet you that there are probably projects that are coming out right before Secret Wars, other
mhm.
than these two.
Yeah, I
Like,
think you're right about that. And with San Diego, I don't know if they'll announce the cast. It might be a little early for that, especially if they don't want to spoil Sadie Sink's
yeah,
character, which they seem pretty intent on that. But I don't know if it's
New
big.
York.
Yeah. If it's they're doing it at New York, that's weird because I'm going to the New York Comic Con, and I don't know if they'll. I don't know if I'll be able to get to because they. I don't know if you've ever been to the New York Comic Con or the Javits Center. They have this mass they held at the Empire Stage. That's where I think one year they brought out. I can't remember. I think it was I think it was the cast of Agents of Shield. Like there was this big stage where they brought out some of those cast members, and I wasn't able to get in. I had to watch a live stream of it. But if they're going to do any major announcements with the future X-Men movie, with Black Panther 3, or with Vision Quest, that's where they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think that especially like if the rumors is true, like they are true, and Secret Wars is gonna be the first appearance of the MCU X-Men. Whether
Uh-huh,
or not the original appearance Secret Wars with them or not is
uh-huh,
up for debate at this point. But if Secret Wars is the original, like the first appearance of these guys, then we will definitely get the casting around New York
mhm,
Comic Con.
mhm. I hope so. Yeah. I would love to be in town for that. I'd love to see if it inspires more cosplayers because X-Men is always well represented in the cosplay scene. But
Yep.
I've noticed in certain years, depending on the year, you can see, you can know which character is trending. Last year, there were a lot of Rogue cosplayers from X-Men 97. Like Rogue is always popular, but there was a lot more Rogue in 2025 and also 2024 as well compared to other X-Men characters. So
I
that's
think it's
that could be a sign. Yeah.
97 roster in general were more
Yeah.
popular. Like I've seen it, like obviously I'm here in Egypt. I just see everything
Mm,
online, but like
mhm.
I've seen a lot of 90s Cyclops, even
Yeah.
before like the Doomsday trailer.
Yes, you're right. The
So
90s Cyclops look is definitely the most popular look. I mean, I've seen every now and then I'll see him with some people with in the astonishing form, but yeah, the 90s era Cyclops costume, that is by far the most popular
yep,
by a
I
wide
love it.
margin.
Yeah, I love his Bendis era and Phoenix costumes just because they match the Phoenix Resurrection tone. So like
Yeah,
they are matching Phoenix really well, but
yeah.
like they look cool. But you'll never be the classic.
No.
And the 90s is the most classic look for him. We
Yeah.
will probably see the X Factor look soon
Oh, yeah.
since X-Men 97 turned it into his look for the future along
Mhm.
with Jane. So we'll
Yep.
definitely see Spike in that. And I love it. Anytime I see the work of people like Silvestri or, you
Mhm.
know, what's his name, Simonson, like it's
Wol
awesome to see.
Walt Simonson.
Yes. I don't know why I blinked on his name. Like he's one of my favorites, but like
Yeah,
it
I met him
happens.
too, yeah. I met him one year. So, yeah,
Yeah,
also one
it's
other thing
exciting.
about the
Yep.
uniforms, when it comes to people who cosplay as Jean, very diverse. I've seen people with their feet with classic Phoenix costumes. Ultimate Jean was popular for a number of years. One year, I even saw X-Men Evolution Jean, which
Yep.
was shocking. I was like, "Wow, I can't believe I'm the only one." It's like I remember meeting the person like X-Men Evolution, and they lit up. Like some people like they didn't recognize this for a while,
Yep.
which is sad because I love X-Men Evolution.
I have someone I dare call him a friend. I don't know how things go when it comes to meeting people online, but I dare call her a friend. Her name is Sarah Starshine on Instagram.
Mhm.
She has been a Jean cosplayer for a long time, and I don't think that she has ever missed like cosplaying any look of Jean. She has cosplayed all of, I think so. She is
That is
most
a
famous
badge of
for
honor.
the
Yeah.
yeah. I think like she is most famous for the green dress as well as the new
Mhm.
X-Men look, but I think
Mhm.
she has done it all. Like
Yeah.
once we're done, or even now you can like look her page up on Instagram. She is just
Mhm.
a phenomenal cosplayer and she's a great fan too.
Yeah.
She is awesome to speak to, especially when it comes to X-Men.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because she's like me. She came into X-Men because of the media between like 90s cartoon and the
Yeah.
movies. So like, unlike you, while she is a great fan of the comics, she's a huge fan of the X-Men movies and Logan. So I can't imagine the fan arguments there. That would be fun. But yeah,
Oh, yeah, it is fun,
so
trust me,
add it
yeah.
up. It will
Yeah.
be fun.
You know if she's gonna be at, New York? Because yeah, yeah. Well,
I haven't spoken to her in a while,
yeah,
but she'll probably post it online.
yeah. I try to meet up with people like some people like, some of the Discord groups I'm in to see if they're gonna be at New York, and, it's tough to coordinate, but yeah, it's always fun to meet some people that I've only met online. It's always cool to connect and see. Well, yeah. By the way, I have this podcast that you might like listening to, or hey, I made this video, and yeah, it's a great experience. The only issue I would probably say is because the New York Comic Con that the Javits Center where they do it, impossible to navigate. That place is a freaking maze. It's like a Zelda dungeon.
That's awesome.
Uh,
I'll hopefully attend one of the Comic Cons one day. They used to like make Comic Cons in the Gulf, but I'm not sure how that operates right
yeah,
now, especially like with the wars and everything
yeah.
going on. But
All right,
like they would spend a lot of money on them. Like Chris Claremont came to Saudi Arabia at one time, and I
cool.
think Emirates as well. So I'll see if I like those ones I can manage. So I've been raised in the Gulf, so I can
Yeah,
manage probably going to one of those at some point
I
when
hope you get a
things.
chance.
Yeah,
I hope you get a chance.
absolutely.
Okay.
And what else do we have? So we can talk about. I think that we can talk about X Men nonstop at this point. Like
Yes.
we're the the crazy X Men
Yeah.
fans. So
Yeah.
we
Well, I
will
do.
see.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. There is one thing. Yeah. I want if it's okay with you, I want to kind of
sure.
expand. The reason I brought up Metzger is because it does kind of bleed into what I want to see with the X-Men MCU. I know we've been talking about rumored casting and the timeline and for when they're going to start showing up after Secret Wars. Reason why I also bring up Metzger because I do feel like the the issue that is going to be the most important for any future X-Men movie is how they frame the villain. Because we've talked about this before, they cannot keep going back to Magneto. They just can't. We've that's been overplayed. Yeah, he should definitely be part of the movies, but he cannot be the primary villain for the entire mutant saga. They have to have someone else. And I'm of the opinion that the best choice for villain, as much as I would love to see Sinister, I do think they have to have a human villain, someone on the level of a Graydon Creed or some, because William Stryker. One of the reasons I liked X2, or why that movie works so much better than others, is because William Stryker was a human. He
Yeah.
kind, I mean, one of the reasons that movie holds up better than most of the other Fox movies is because Stryker, he kind of sounds a lot like some of the like certain. I don't want to get too political on this
Yeah.
podcast, but
Some people nowadays, yeah.
you let's just say you if that movie came out today, you would know how William Stryker would have voted in the last American election. So that's all I'm going to say. But
Yeah.
my point is, for the future X-Men movies, they need a good human villain. Metzger might not be that villain, but they need someone. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's true. And they have a lot of characters to do that with. Like right
Mhm.
at the top of my mind, it's obviously Cameron Hodge. And you
Yes.
can go crazy with him because you can like to bring it back to something that exists in the MCU, the
Mhm.
AI threat. Or, we know that Vision Quest is introducing Jocasta and
Mhm.
multiple like of the comics AI, as well as bringing back Vision and Ultron. So Cameron Hodge, of course, he's a human. You can play with him, and later down the line, you can play with the phalanx.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. They might have to. Yeah. But if they did that whole part with Hodge blending himself with that almost is a little too relevant.
yeah,
Because the growth, another thing that's kind of, I don't, this is necessarily a good thing, but the bar for evil in the real world has been raised a lot thanks to my home country, America, unfortunately. I feel like the time is, you cannot be too over the top when it comes to making an evil human anti mutant crusader.
yeah,
Simply because they are, we've seen how crazy, extreme, and downright stupid some of the bigotry can be. And I think social media has sort of amplified it. So, I mean, the stuff, like if they tried to make someone like that extreme back in when the Fox movies were being made, it probably would have said, this isn't realistic enough. Not
yeah,
that they did that today, it would hit a little, it would hit hard, but it would say, okay, well, this is believable. I can totally believe someone would be this
crazy.
deranged. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy is too light a word. They have to be deranged.
Like as I was thinking about it, I think that Cameron Hodge
Mhm.
fits also like the multiple aspects that Marvel in general wants to expand on. So we know
Mhm.
that they want to expand on their cosmic side, their mystical
Mhm.
side, as
Mhm.
well as the AI side. With the
Yeah.
street level, of course. And, Cameron Hodge meets that well because, one of the most famous Phalanx stories that isn't Phalanx Covenant is with Ultron. It's I didn't, yeah, it's what's it called? Annihilation 2.
The
What's it called?
Annihilation Wave. Yeah.
The second one after Annihilus, I'm forgetting, but
Mhm.
that's one. We also have like Cameron Hodge is also tied to magic, so he didn't just blend
Mhm.
himself with tech; he blended himself with magic due to
Mhm.
the deal with Velasco or whatever his name was
Balance.
back
Yeah.
in Inferno. Yeah, so like you can expand a lot with someone like him in the MCU in general.
Mhm.
And I know it's a forgotten thing that Marvel did recently, but they recently introduced the blend between the street level and magic, or
Mhm.
reintroduced it, I should say, because it existed with Daredevil with the hand.
Mhm.
They put it in Echo a little bit, and in Ironheart they introduced the Hood,
Yeah. The Hood.
a major figure when it comes to the street level world and the
Mhm.
mystical world, along with of course Mephisto and
Mhm.
his cloak.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably in the minority when I say I liked Ironheart. I know
I did too.
it doesn't have a good reputation. I mean, I made a video praising it. And it was one of my lowest rated videos to date.
Yeah,
But I feel like the hate for that show is really unearned because I mean, I think it did really well having the Hood kind of go up against, it's like magic versus tech. We've seen that play out in the comics, and I think it was done well. And I think that's another clash that I hope we can see more of, because these are two incompatible things. The only one who really is able to meld them is, ironically enough, Victor Von Doom.
yeah.
So I think that's pretty telling that you have magic and tech clashing, but the only person who knows how to make it work together is Doom.
I think one of the things I've loved about the MCU for the past, and like they do it to various degrees up to this day, is
Mhm.
salvaging things that didn't go well and learning
Mhm.
from them. So,
Yeah.
despite the fact that they will have the egos to not tell you that they learned or whatever, but they learn and they salvage things. So,
Yes.
look at Endgame. Like Endgame salvaged everything wrong with Thor: The Dark World. They doubled down on the fact that it's in continuity, and they were
Mhm.
like, okay, why does this movie not work for some people? It's because this and that. Let's give it another layer and
Yeah.
change the perspective of it. So people now, even like if you watch Dark World with its problems,
Yeah.
you'd find it more enjoyable based on the fact that you now have Endgame in your mind, and you know you have this set of, like you have this setting of the characters. You know
Mhm.
you feel sympathetic for Thor, for his mother, like you can change that. So, and they want to do that with the Iron Man side of thing for a long
Mhm.
time, because while we love Iron Man as a character, his movies have been like a mixed bag for people when it
Mhm.
comes to the villains. So like you can see it with like a one shot like All Hail the King from 2013 with
I remember that.
Trevor Slattery, which led into Chang-Chi, and they use it in Wonder Man. I know a lot of people talk about how things are messy in Wonder Man. No, Wonder Man tied back to All Hail the King and
Mhm.
Chang-Chi. So like they are salvaging the parts that didn't work with Iron Man for the MCU going forward. And
Mhm.
I'd imagine that with Ironheart, they would do that. Not necessarily in Ironheart, but in projects that are related to everything Ironheart introduced.
Mhm.
So we have, as I said, the Iron Man universe, and it's like, although Iron Man is gone, there is a lot to do between
Mhm.
Shang-Chi, between Ironheart, between Rhodey and his movie that never came out.
Poor Rhodey.
Yeah, you have the elements of magic between,
Mhm.
Doctor Strange, the Thor movies,
Yeah.
the Wanda and Agatha stuff,
Yeah.
like Midnight Suns if it comes, because,
Yeah.
there are also rumors that Blade is coming in Secret Wars. Marshall Ali will be used, which honestly,
I
that's a good
hope
use of,
so.
of the cast. Like, he has been cast in this role for 7 years and he hasn't done anything. So honestly, bring him
I feel
back.
bad
So
for him. Yeah.
absolutely. So, like, I think, honestly, I enjoyed Ironheart myself. I
Mhm.
wouldn't rank it in my top MCU shows or movies. It's like, it's okay. It's fun. It's nothing more. And that's the main problem with it.
Yeah, I just
And,
think you and I are kind of, in the minority in liking Ironheart,
yeah,
which is frustrating.
yeah, I think, Ironheart and Echo, they were almost tax write offs. So they
Mhm.
were like, let's throw them out there because we'll probably use them.
Yeah.
So and that's why they didn't care about the market. I bet you if they focused on marketing Iron Heart a bit, it would have done better. But it was a tax write-off, so they were like,
Mhm.
okay, let's introduce it out there, and maybe we'll do something with it down the line. Because as I said, it still plays with the Iron Man world pretty well. Like you introduced Ezekiel Stain. Who would have thought that you would introduce Ezekiel Stain? And
Yeah.
you made him the Iron Man villain that he should have been a decade
Mhm.
ago with Iron Man. But that's why it's the Iron Man world. You can have Rhodey
Mhm.
fight him. You can have anyone. Like you just have to play your cards right.
There's a
And with
right
the
way to
MC,
do it, it's just hard.
yeah, I think that under the direction of like people who know what they want to do, it can be done. Especially like
Mhm.
as I mentioned earlier, like Daniel Cretton is involved with the MCU majorly.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And he's a fan of the Iron Man universe, and as we mentioned, like he chose to like tie into Iron Man 3, All Hail the King, and expand on them with his stuff between Wonder Man and Shang-Chi. So
Mhm.
maybe down the line he'll do something with that world. That will be fun to see.
Mhm.
I think so. Like all of the shows have that to some extent. She-Hulk and Secret Invasion didn't go
Mhm.
well with people. Like
To say the least.
Secret Invasion mostly, and
Yeah.
you can still salvage it. At any moment you can do, let's say, Avengers, Secret Invasion, and still continue on the plot again with the
Mhm.
scrolls. It didn't go anywhere. I don't know what's wrong with me, but yeah. So you can still salvage it, and I'm just hoping for the best. What do you
Yeah.
think?
So all we can do, but with all these, you talk about a lot of these mystical elements kind of mixing with tech elements. My hope is that it all eventually leads to a Midnight Suns movie. Like I think after Secret Wars, that might be the next big crossover event that they'll be building towards, because it does make sense if they want to actually do something with Blade. I know Marshall Ali cannot wait forever, but
Yeah.
it would make sense if they would they if, because that will also tie, if they wanted to do that, they could also build towards they want to bring in magical Ilyana from the X-Men. She was, I know the New Mutants movie was a disaster for reasons that have nothing to that are way beyond its
The
control.
actors. Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to admit, I've seen the movie. Anya Taylor-Joy is genuinely good as Magic.
Yeah.
I would love not I would love it if she got a chance to play that character again and do her justice. I mean, having her team. I don't know if because I haven't heard anything about the next Doctor Strange movie. It would be cool if that would be a way for him to meet Ilyana, but I do think a Midnight Suns movie, one that would actually bring in what Ironheart did with Mephisto, have him come into the picture, because Mephisto is a top level super cosmic villain on the level of Dormammu. And if Marvel really wants to, if they want to bring to really elevate their mystical the mystical side, that's the route I think they should do. And a Midnight Suns
Yeah.
movie would be like Magic Avengers. I think that would definitely get people excited. I would love to see that.
Absolutely. And I think that, the mystical universe, in a way, is coherent enough with Marvel, but
Yes, I agree.
it is like, it still needs streamlining. So we have Wanda, and we don't know what happens with the Darkhold and Chitula. That has been like on the side for too long.
Uh-huh.
And, I bet you they will use that soon.
Uh-huh.
We have, of course, with Wanda comes, whatever happens with Vision Quest and Agatha and William.
Uh-huh.
We have, as you mentioned, like Dormammu leads to Clea, which leads ironically to the Hood, because at least for the majority of the Ironheart show, people thought, especially who read the comics, that the Hood's powers come from Dormammu.
Uh-huh.
Of course, at the end, there is a twist that's different from the comics, which is that the powers come from Mephisto, but Dormammu and Mephisto are connected, and you even
Yeah.
see it, like he makes fun of like people comparing him to Dormammu, and like you
Yeah.
see that rivalry between
Yeah.
them in a sense.
Exactly.
So
Plus, Doctor Strange already bested Dormammu. He came to bargain, remember, in the first
yeah,
Doctor Strange movie. It wouldn't make sense to use him again. I think I'm glad they chose Mephisto instead. I think Sacha Baron Cohen was great casting. I really hope they get a chance to use him again, because he's a fun actor. He really, he's one of those actors who really does transform when he does a part. I mean, I know I could talk about what he did with Borat, but that's still that's a guilty pleasure movie, by the way. That is hard to. You hate yourself for laughing at it, but you still laugh at it.
yeah, I know that feeling pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think that when it comes to casting, they all have a lot of great casting. You have Elizabeth Olsen, you have I'm sorry, I forgot the actor's name again. You just mentioned, and you have Benedict Cumberbatch
Yes.
playing multiple characters. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people forget, but he's their mom as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's
So
not just Doctor
yeah.
Strange.
Yeah. He's very versatile. He was even before he got cast as Doctor Strange. So I am.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, I would love, again, Midnight Suns would be a great post Secret War movie to build towards.
yeah.
In terms
Charlize
of.
Theron,
Yeah.
we have to bring her back. She is one
Yeah.
of the hot, stars
Yeah.
in general. So bring her back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that post-credit scene that we saw in Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, bring her into the picture. Have her lead the charge against Mephisto, but knowing that they can't do it alone. And that would be, that'd be pretty epic. And there's a whole lot of other mystical characters they could probably tap into. But I do think if they want to, they could probably bring Danielle or Danny Moonstar in. Like,
Yeah,
I know I don't want to turn this into a discussion about everything that went wrong with New Mutants, because we'd be here for
yeah,
hours and hours on end. But I do think that movie did at least mix mutants with mystical stuff just right.
yeah,
I mean, it had a lot of other flaws. Don't get me wrong, and I am not.
yeah. I get you.
Yeah, but that movie did have something. I don't think we should forget about it completely. If anything, if only because Anya Taylor-Joy was great as Magic, and Elise Williams was really good as Rain. But yeah, that's really all I can. I don't want to derail
Yeah,
this
no,
and talk about New Mutants for 4 hours,
no
because.
worries.
But
We can do it. But the thing that, like, sorry to cut you up, but the thing
No.
I think it's easiest to introduce someone like Danny Moonstar since most of her magic as well as Rain's ties to magic are related to established elements in the
Hmm.
MCU. So like
Yeah.
Moonstar is a Valkyrie.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
So like you don't need to do much with them to introduce them. Unlike let's say Ilyana, you'll have to introduce Limbo, you'll have
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it can be done, but yeah, it's why you would have to build towards a Midnight Suns movie to really make that work. And it could also it would also tie in. It would help link the magic elements to the mutant elements because we've had enough of the multiverse. I think most fans have kind of burned out on the idea. They're ready for the multiverse stuff to be over with for the most part. But
yeah, it depends on the project. Like,
yeah,
I think, people are not done with Deadpool, and even Ryan Reynolds confirmed that him and Hugh
yeah,
Jackman, like, they are planning stuff with the MCU similar to the Exots,
yeah,
with
yeah,
even like rumors saying that he is in talks with Halle Berry about Storm and other characters. So,
mhm,
like, the multiverse as a plot, it's not done. I think that bad interpretations of the multiverse are
yeah.
done.
Yeah, I agree. There's still ways to do it right. I know Deadpool 3 definitely,
No
and
Way
No Way
Home,
Home are the success stories.
Invincible,
Yeah,
Invincible. No, the boys didn't do it. Like I
the
think
boys
that
didn't do it.
yeah,
Yeah,
most plots that like most stuff that did the multiverse did it well. I think that it's just that people remember the bad stuff. So
yeah,
that which ironically have bad interpretations of the multiverse. Like Doctor
mhm,
Strange Multiverse of Madness. It had some good elements, but mostly the elements are all bad because you didn't really do anything with the multiverse other than
yeah,
these are some cameos
yeah,
and here's some funny elements. So cars
yeah,
move on red instead of green lights.
yeah. They had to. Yeah, they had to. I think a lot of fans did not like what they did to Wanda for that movie. I think wasn't the original. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it the original plan to have Nightmare be the main villain?
Yes, actually, I had that in mind while I was talking about concept art not becoming real because
Hmm.
the original idea that had the original director leave was that he wanted to do a team up movie with Wanda and Strange against Nightmare. And the concept art is out. You can see it online or
Hmm.
even buy it. But the studio didn't want to go with that and they wanted to go with the multiverse direction, which
Hmm.
is why the director left.
That's too bad because that would have been fun. I would have loved to see Nightmare show up in that movie. I mean, it also, yeah, again, I do feel like fans just did not like that they made Wanda so much of a villain. They also didn't like that it kind of made WandaVision almost required watching because it was kind of
Not
jarring.
really.
Yeah, but I know that I've seen the debates among Wanda fans. It's contentious at times, to be generous, but that is yeah, that's one of those movies that I enjoyed it when I saw it in theaters, but every time I rewatch it, I feel like this could have been better. That's just how I
Yeah,
feel about it. Yeah.
absolutely. I think that the issue with like Doctor Strange, in fact, is not making WandaVision like a necessary watch. I
Mhm.
think the idea is that it ignored it completely. Because,
Yeah.
like, and you could have done like what the movie wanted to do with certain tweaks. So if you have expanded more on the fact that Cthulhu or someone is manipulating Wanda and her feelings after WandaVision, it could have made sense and you can continue
Yeah.
from that. But what
Yeah.
happened is that you ignored what happened and you then re-explored it. Like, because if you think about it, the plot of WandaVision is the same for Doctor Strange. But one
Pretty
ends
much.
with, yeah, but one ends with her, like, trying to figure out what to do next. I'm the hero who did something wrong. Whereas the other one ends with her being the villain
Yeah.
and she's
Yeah.
doubling down on being the villain up until the last point.
Yeah.
So like it's the same like why tell the same story two times at the same time? And
Mm.
I know like Michael, what's his name? The guy who wrote Loki and Doctor Strange came out and said that he watched WandaVision, but clearly he didn't watch it till
Didn't
the
watch it very
end.
close enough. Yeah.
Like I bet you he was watching it while writing the script because at that time Marvel was famous for writing multiple scripts at the same time
Yeah.
and like ditching them. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp had 21 scripts at some point. They
Yeah.
said it, 21
Yeah.
scripts.
I think James Gunn has even talked about this a few times. He says Marvel
Yeah,
Studios is notorious for not having a completed script when they start production.
Yeah, so like things are crazy when it comes to that. So, I think that as I said earlier, you can still make everything make sense. You just have to tweak certain elements. Going back to
Hmm.
the Thor the Dark World analogy with Endgame, you can do that with Doctor Strange. You can do that with Ant-Man. You can do that with anything you have
Hmm.
fumbled accidentally, like over the years.
Hmm.
Especially because contrary to online belief, people still have interest in superhero movies and
Hmm.
in the characters in the Marvel universe. If they didn't, no one would be talking about them anymore. They wouldn't
Hmm.
be making 500 million in the box office or
Yeah.
even more than that, depending on the project. Like as I've mentioned in a previous stream, even though they are back quality, people still watch Doctor Strange. People
They
still
did.
watch what's it called, Thor. Like
Yeah. Thor:
Thor
Love
did
and Thunder.
Thor Love and Thunder came out at the time when people were like, we're done with the multiverse, we're done with the MCU,
Mhm.
we're done with everything. It made 800 million.
Yeah, that's something I love pointing out to people saying the MCU is dead. I every
Yeah,
time I hear that, I wish I could slap someone through the computer screen
yeah,
because they clearly can't count.
yeah. The movies that suffered either because of COVID or because of bans.
Yeah.
Eternals was banned in what, 70% of the world?
Yep. Yes, it was.
China, the Middle East, and some other places banned Eternals. That's why it didn't perform well.
Mhm.
The only movie that wasn't banned and did not perform well because the marketing sucked was the Marvels.
Yeah, and plus that was with the writer's strike too. They couldn't even market it because of the writer's strike.
Absolutely. So, like,
Yeah.
technically, it's one movie out of 37 MCU movies,
Yeah.
however many DC movies that came out, and, everything else. So, like,
Yeah.
one movie in 37, that's not bad.
That's a winning record still. And if that's like it's like a championship football team with one loss. I'm like, yeah, you can whine about one loss, but you can't. There's still one.
Yeah,
I know that.
Venom
I
made
know.
money.
Yeah, yeah,
Three
it
Venom
did.
movies made a lot of money, despite the fact that even with the height of the MCU, people hated on Venom, and it's
Yeah,
not the best movie ever made.
yeah.
The trilogy still made 1.5 billion.
I know it's crazy. Okay, every time I remember when the first Venom movie came out. This was pre-COVID. I remember
Yeah,
seeing the
2018.
Yeah, because one of the things I don't look at the tomato meter scores before I see a movie. And I remember when I went and I saw Venom in theaters, I thought, okay, all right, this kind of I wouldn't know what to expecting, but I liked it. I leave, I go home and I walk and I see the what was it like 37% on Rotten Tomatoes when it was came out. I'm like, are you
Yeah,
kidding me? How could it? But then the movie went on to make what $800 million at the
yeah.
box office, despite that score. I'm like, okay, clearly it resonated enough because that was one of those weird movies where all the reviews and all the all Metacritic, they all panned the movie, but people who actually see the movie liked it.
Yeah, so Venom made 1.5 billion in the box office. Granted, like every sequel had like lost a bit of money compared to the
Yeah,
first. So you had 800 million, then 500 million, then 400 million.
yeah,
But it's consistent,
yeah,
With Ant-Man, for example, the trilogy, the three movies made 500 million each.
yeah.
So
Oh,
like it's the same audience that went for Ant-Man 1, went
uh-huh,
for Ant-Man 2, went for Ant-Man 3.
uh-huh.
So yes, as you know, James Gunn pointed that out. Robert Kirkman pointed that out, and even Anthony Starr when talking about the boys.
Yeah,
There is a fatigue. It's a fatigue of being fed back products, or
yeah,
products that are forced on people. But
mm,
you can make something that works,
yeah,
and of course, not antagonize the fans while you're doing it, because
mhm,
one of the things I've noticed when watching She-Hulk, I enjoyed She-Hulk up until like episode 6 or something, so I
yeah,
wasn't like really hating on it. It has its problems, but I
yeah,
wasn't hating on it. But I was turned, but like because the director was attacking people like endlessly. Okay, there are trolls online, but ignore them and focus on the fans.
mhm,
The trolls have always existed, especially when it comes to something like the Marvel
yeah,
Cinematic Universe, something watched by like we're talking about what, millions of people, maybe billions watching it yearly.
mhm,
So you're gonna get trolls. You're gonna get people to hate on your projects. That's
yeah,
not something new. So don't focus on the trolls, and absolutely do not,
mhm,
antagonize the fans while you're attacking the trolls, because
mm.
you can't speak well enough to antagonize just the trolls. So you end up offending the fans accidentally.
Yeah. Well, I think the trolls know that on some extent. They know if they troll hard enough, they're going to invite a response that's going. Yeah, it's very they are basically they are the supervillains of the real world, and they have no redeeming values. And I want to go on record as saying I am anti-troll. Everyone should be anti-troll. Anyone who does troll, anyone who utters things like the MCU or the Snyder cult or even the Comicsgate people that
Yeah.
were whining in the 2010s, they have no redeeming values, and they only exist to whine, complain, and essentially they try to get people to they eventually try to get the companies they're mocking to overcorrect or do something that is never gonna it's gonna be detrimental. I mean, I've dealt with some of these people directly. I've had the misfortune of talking to some of them. It's a waste of time. I mean,
Yeah.
these are not people you can placate at all. These are just people who feed on your attention and feed on outrage and in the least healthy way possible. And
Yeah.
I know Marvel and Disney are very, very, very sensitive to their public perception. Trolls know that. They exploit that. I've seen people, take it to absurd extremes, and I don't envy how they have to manage it. But when it comes to the actual product, they can't let that kind of trolling influence them, especially when we get around to X-Men. Because I want to make a prediction now, and I really hope I'm wrong.
Mm.
I don't think it doesn't really matter how Marvel Studios chooses to reboot the X-Men in the MCU. It's going to be quote unquote political. There's
Yes.
a certain segment of the internet that are going to say they are directly attacking uh, us.
Certain
By us,
groups.
they
Yeah.
don't. Yes, they're going to say, "Oh, they're attacking us. They're attacking." Probably gonna, I don't want to
Yeah.
name
Yeah. Yeah.
names, but you know who I'm referring to. The people who constantly think they're being attacked for. I don't even want to
Anything.
put it into
Yeah.
words,
For
but
anything. That's
yeah,
true. Continue.
yeah, and it really, and I kind of want to bring this back to how you portray the X-Men, because the same thing happened with Henry Cavill's Superman. The problem is that the worst people used it as sort of a cudgel. They used it as a foundation for an agenda that had nothing to do with the actual story. I
Yeah.
mean, again, I don't want to get back into the Snyder stuff, so I won't. But when I do remember, I'm old enough to remember whenever X-Men did a controversial story like God Loves, Man Kills, that was actually there were news segments on that story when it first came out years and years ago. I remember those. I also remember how when the X-Men cartoon in the 90s first came out, and it was a very, very different time. But the idea of being a freak, of being a nerd, that had carried different weight in the 90s compared to what it does now. And here's the thing: some people who aren't rebels, who aren't, you know, like the freedom fighters, they think they are, but when you take a step back, they're the villains. And again, that segment of people that I do not want to name because I'm in America and I have to deal with these people directly. They will watch the X-Men movie and they will say one or two. They think they're the X-Men. They're the ones who will represent the oppressed, and they're not. Or they're going to look at the villains, whoever they are, whether it's William Metzer, whether it's Mr. Sinister or Cameron Hodge. I mean, I guarantee you there are certain tech billionaires who are very thin-skinned will see Cameron Hodge and think, that's someone to aspire to, or they're making fun of me, because these people have like the thinnest skin imaginable, and they cannot see the forest from the trees. It's not that they feel victimized. They always believe they're the heroes, but they aren't. They aren't even the villains. They're just assholes, plain and simple. And whatever happens with the X-Men movies, again, that's why I really think they need to lean into how evil their antagonists are. You cannot have, for an X-Men movie, you can't have an understandable, sympathetic villain like you did with Eric Killmonger or with Magneto. You need to really lean into, like, there's nothing redeeming about this villain. That's just I'm sorry if I'm going off on a
Yeah, no
rant, but
worries. No, 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 no.
yeah.
That's relevant. Actually, we're still talking about the MCU and like things that are relevant. The
Yeah.
issue I think that we need to do is that we need to have the villains like be unredeemable to some sense, because some villains are
Yes.
like, even like ignoring politics at all and going to Batman, the Joker is an irredeemable villain.
Yeah.
but you have to write them in a way that doesn't make them messy. So I'll have two examples, and they are comics
Go ahead.
related with the same villain. So we have the way House of X and Powers of Ten introduced Orcus
Yes.
versus how Jerry Dugan and Karen Gillan ended the orchestra with
Yeah.
Fall on Rise. When like Hickman introduced that, this was something intellectual to look at. This was something, you know that they're irredeemable, but you love reading something complicated,
Hmm.
something, it's not generic, it's not revenge fantasy, it's not
Hmm.
any of that stuff. Versus what Duggan ended up doing, it became a revenge fantasy,
Yeah.
and it became a parody, and it became bad to the point that the fans who agree with Duggan politically were like, what the F is happening here? Like,
I remember.
because, that's the trap that you don't need to fall into as a writer
Yeah.
in general, whether you are writing for the MCU, whether
Yeah.
you're writing for comics, any of that stuff. And if you fall into it, you will become the next Jessica Gao. You will become the person who
Hmm.
unintentionally antagonizes the fans instead of dealing with trolls. Because
Yeah.
what happened with Jessica Gao and She-Hulk? She didn't actually defend herself against the trolls. She made
Hmm.
herself more susceptible to attacks from the trolls and offended the general audience who didn't know that she existed
Hmm.
for a
Yeah.
while. But they knew but they knew her after that, because the trolls made sure that everyone knew that this Marvel director insulted fans. This
Yeah.
Marvel director did that, and of course, news outlets
Hmm.
came out and said that to some extent, whether it's Deadline, Hollywood Reporter,
Yeah.
etc. So, you have to be careful when you're writing so that you don't lose the writing capabilities, and you introduce some people that are fun to write. At the same time, you also have to manage, the
Hmm.
PR better, especially
Yeah.
with the trolls around, because we are never gonna get rid of trolls now. That's
No.
just
No.
the world. And
It has to be. Yeah. We need a class on how to deal with trolls because what I, this isn't just a Disney thing. It's not just a Marvel thing. It's not even just a Hollywood thing. This goes back even before social media. Social media just made it so much harder
yeah,
because, like these companies, they can't not be on social media. They need social media to advertise their products, to raise awareness, build hype. They can't not use social media like you and I. We can turn it off
yeah,
and we can choose not to tweet stuff for a while, but they can't. They have to do it. And whatever I don't know what if it's been studied the best way to deal with trolls. I'm sure there's people far smarter than I am who
yeah,
have figured it out. But the reason why I think it is relevant is because once we get into the mutant saga, once we start dealing with what mutants actually do represent, it's going to be really, really hard to avoid the trolling that will follow. And
yeah,
you have to manage it correctly. Like you brought up what happened with Orcus under Dugan at the end of the Krakoa era.
yeah.
That's one thing that should not translate.
To come to
Yeah,
movies, yes,
yeah, and I think if you really want to make it, if you want to keep things, if you don't want it to make it overly complicated, I mean there are templates to follow. Again, Cameron Hodge, I'm sorry we are coming back to him a lot. I've noticed
yep. Because
he is not a
he's
he's
a
not a
great
redeemable
villain, but
person.
no
Yeah.
one uses him. That's the issue.
Yeah, yeah, we should. Yeah, I really do feel like that is something we should, other writers should bring up because he is not redeemable at all. There's nothing likable about him. There's nothing. What he was in the X-Men cartoon. He's been in the comics. There's nothing. He's not sympathetic in the slightest, and he's someone you could definitely build into a really good threat. But
Yeah,
Marvel just kind of chooses really. They haven't really done much with it.
yeah. When you think about him, Cameron Hodge as a person can be, I don't want to use this analogy, but I can't find anything better. He is the Loki to the original five, especially Warren.
Oh, okay,
If you
I
if
like
you
that.
think about it, because he was Warren's brother, sorta, and then he betrayed him and he killed Candy, who is she has been his friend for almost as long as Warren. They
Yeah,
were a thing even before the original five existed. So
yeah.
you can do something emotional there with the humanity, and it's all about jealousy. It's all about being unredeemable. He is Lex Luthor. If I want to compare him to
Yeah.
another villain, he is Lex Luthor to Warren
Minus the
Murdoch.
charisma. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Y-
the reason behind his actions is just greed. You know how
Yeah.
Lex Luthor, even in the Superman movie, but others than that, he is just envious of Superman. And in
Hmm.
some forms, like the comics, that gets expanded upon a lot. And of course, you have twists and turns because Jeff Johns even commented on that recently. He was like, I've put him on the Justice League
Yeah.
because he is human. Humans, even the worst of them, do have good sides, but in the end, he's unredeemable.
Yeah.
Like, he is unredeemable, but I think you have to distinguish the difference between being a human and sympathizing with him to an extent and being irredeemable. Another villain who fits that, who's an X-Men villain, is Braden Creed,
Yeah.
because
Great and Creed.
yeah, while people will compare him to politicians and other stuff these
Yeah.
days, but his backstory is also like the reason why he became who he is, and
Yeah.
like it's not compelling, but it's rooted in human emotion and drama because
Yeah.
he was abandoned by his mother, and his father wanted to kill him on multiple occasions. At the same time, his mother kind of raised two other siblings of his
Yeah.
better, although like she abandoned one and she
That's
raised the other
debatable.
one.
That's
Yeah,
messy.
like she raised one, abandoned one, and almost killed one. So Mystique is
Yeah.
a bad mother. We'll never defend Mystique.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to that,
She has a very skewed standard.
yeah, so like they're like you want to show him as a villain, but you also have to introduce that human element. And for better or worse, some people will understand that, especially
Yeah.
like in this day and age where like a lot of people are growing up in abusive households. They are growing
Yeah.
up like abandoned by parents. What like
Hmm.
this will be topical and relevant, even if we are showing the villain being unredeemable. And
Yeah.
that's not a weakness to the villain or to Marvel Studios or the
Yeah.
comics. That's actually a strength to play to.
Yeah, exactly. And when bringing this back to someone like, well, actually, let's stick on Graydon Creed for a second, because the fact that he's human, but his parents are mutants. There are parallels with that. I've and this is something I've learned and I've seen in America. It's not uncommon to have people who are vehemently, vocally, and angrily against the LGBTQ community, and yet we find out later on they're secretly gay.
Yeah.
There have been multiple pastors who have had. I don't know if you've been aware of them, going all the way back to 2000, the early 2000s. This is a phenomenon, like the self-hating, the vehemently anti-gay pastor or crusader
Yeah.
who also happens to be gay. Someone like Graydon Creed perfectly mirrors that in the sense that he is so vocally anti-mutant. I mean, and I don't know if you remember his scenes in the old cartoon. He hates mutants. When someone says, "Why do you hate us?" He says, "Because you were born." And I think some of that is he's talking to himself. On some levels, he knows he was born from two mutants, and that
Yeah.
disgusts him, and he can never escape that. And it's really drives him insane. And
Yeah.
he's the kind of person who you put him in an X-Men movie and you could watch someone truly lose their mind because, it's one thing because the human brain it can only process hypocrisy to a certain point before it completely breaks. I've seen this happen. We've seen meltdowns in the public. We've seen people go to horrific extremes. Like, I don't know, here there's some popular political figures. I don't want to name them on this podcast who I think one of them is vocally anti-gay. However, it was more than a few people have come forth and said, this guy is gay. Like one guy
Yeah.
accidentally shared his screen and it had a banner for gay cruises, which is like,
Yeah.
you do know that those ads don't show unless you've been to certain sites. You know that, right? And of course, people don't ignore it. But the reason that's relevant to someone like Graydon Creed is because he's someone who could carry the shame. Like, I hate mutants, even though both my parents are mutants. Yeah, both they're not exactly nice mutants either. But
Yeah.
him responding to that kind of an extreme would definitely be relevant. And I it wasn't. Wait, correct me if wasn't Creed's name mentioned at the end of X-Men '97 season one?
Yes, it was. So
Okay.
he is a presidential candidate at this
Okay.
point.
Okay, so that would yeah, the politics are there, and I think if they wanna bring that into the movies, that would be extremely relevant because and
Yeah.
it would hit some harder than others. I have a feeling if they played that angle up, there would be a handful of certain political commentators who would take great offense to it, and yet
Mhm.
the irony would go right over their heads, but I think that would just be funny. It wouldn't be,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think when it comes to X-Men, like the parallels are always there and the
Mhm,
hypocrisy is always presented on both sides. So let's take Braden Creed and Magneto, because
mhm,
both of them are the same. I know that
mhm,
we don't like to think of Magneto that way, but
mhm,
it is true. Both of them grew to hate the other group because of, accidents that happened to them.
mhm,
And, it's a general, like, it's the crime of generalizing. So this person
mhm.
did something to me, so his whole group is bad. And
Yeah.
when you reflect that in our real world, okay, a couple of bad guys did bad things and they happen to be of this certain group, then we
Mhm,
antagonize the certain group. You can go to his like even recent history and
mhm,
see people do that. With Magneto and Craden, they both do that, but it's all like they're each other's enemies. So
mhm.
Graydon does that because he hates his parents because he is a victim of his parents. We
Yeah,
cannot
very much so.
ignore that. Like they abandon him, they try to kill him. He's a victim of them in every way possible. But what
Mhm,
happens is that he's not looking for revenge against Mystique or Sabretooth. He's looking for revenge against everyone. Jubilee, Jean Grey,
mhm,
Wolverine, like everyone who didn't do it. They just exist and they are of the same group as the people that hurt him.
mhm,
Magneto is the same when you think about him. First, it was, the side, like the Holocaust side of things. But then when he
mhm,
grew up, it became the mutant side of things because, a couple of guys, they kill his daughters. So he ended up, hating all humans. But both of them missed the point. And I think that that's the irony of the X-Men is that
mhm.
everyone is a human. Like you missed this point somewhere.
Yeah,
And that's why some modern interpretations of X-Men fail, in my opinion. It's because that they try to make the X-Men think of themselves as different than humans. And
yeah,
that's totally not the point of the X-Men. The point of the
exactly.
X-Men throughout existence, even like back when Cyclops was doing his Utopia era and even the Bendis era, is the
Mhm,
fact that I'm still human. I just have to wear a visor because of my powers, or
mhm,
I'm a human who looks like who has fur. That's the point of the X-Men. And when you
mhm.
lose sight of that, you
Yeah,
lose. Jonathan Hickman, I think that one of the interesting things he did that ended up being a failure because of how Krakoa ended is that he tried to, like, for plot reasons, skew the X-Men away from that. You had
mhm,
Jean Grey who talks a lot about being human, like
mhm,
historically speaking, especially like when you see her advocating for human mutant relationships during the
mhm,
80s and 90s, she would mention something that we're not humans, we're better than humans or stuff.
mhm,
Jonathan Hickman put that on, like, I know Hickman's plots from reading a lot of Hickman
mhm,
comics. He never puts something that he doesn't pay through, especially when it comes to philosophical debates and
mhm,
and stuff like that. But because of the shenanigans and the changes in the X office, that
mhm.
ended up being taken wrong because it
Yeah,
didn't age up to a point where, okay, the mutants did that because of this and this and that. It ended up being the mutants adopting Magneto's theory, which is wrong, especially like with the X-Men, because the X-Men have always been there to try to balance things, and they were the only people that the truth.
mhm,
They see
ex
that they're all humans. They try to balance Creed and Magneto, and they fail because the reality is, we unfortunately fail in that situation.
mhm,
The only way to win this is that with, like, realistically speaking, is that every one of us realizes what's the truth, what's the right
mhm.
way to do stuff, and then they focus on themselves. Hopefully, that will heal the world in the better future. But in terms of comics and how comics go,
Yeah,
they have to lose to always keep going.
yeah, yeah, that's the there's a cynical foundation there that we can't that's kind of hard to get around. But, yeah, one of the things that I do kind of wanna tie this in with, which you mentioned both the Utopia era and the Krakoa era, And I think the reason why I bring those two things up, because I think that's probably going to be something that's the MCU and also X-Men 97 is going to have to grapple with at some point. Like Utopia was founded specifically because mutants were kind of backed into a corner. One, they were still suffering from the results of End Day. They had also the government, the United States had been taken over by Norman Osborn and the Dark Avengers. Like this was a situation where if they didn't do something like Utopia, they probably would have been slaughtered. There was no way around it. Krakoa, the circumstances were a little different. Krakoa was then kind of making this big, bold statement that, okay, we're going to make our nation, we're going to make it part of the global community, and we're going to prove that this is how good we can be when we organize. But I think what was lost with when Hickman's plan with yeah, that was a great idea and that was a good foundation. The problem was Hickman's plans got derailed and it kind of just became another Genosha. And that is something that that the movies and X-Men 97 has to avoid. Don't make Krakoa, Utopia, whatever mutant society you create, don't make it like Genosha again. We know how that ends. Yep. You have to do something unique. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sorry I keep saying that because I don't trust my memory, because I'm getting older. But I think at one point, wasn't there a plan? I think it was Morrison who wanted to have humans join the Xavier Institute. Was that am I misremembering something?
Yeah, that was Morrison. That was because Morrison's ideas behind the school, like they were the first one to turn the school into actual school. Before that, it was just, the living place of the X-Men. And they do tutor young people, whether it's Jubilee, the New Mutant Sunspot, but it wasn't really a school. Like Morrison wanted to make it some sort of a public school in a sense.
Yeah.
And that's why they put the protests and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Morrison's ideas have some merit to them, but I think that with how the X-Men are built, they just tend to fail. Like going back to the idea of irredeemable villains, as we've talked about Greed and Creed, Morrison's idea is that Magneto is an irredeemable villain. But that doesn't work. Like it can work. No. It could have worked if we're talking about Magneto in the early Claremont run.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work anymore once you have seen Magneto's evolution in the Claremont run, and even in the 90s when he was a villain again or afterwards. And that's why it got taken away. And that's why I think, generally speaking, that's why I always point to the fact that Grant Morrison is a great writer. They did not understand X-Men because they came to X-Men from a certain point of view based on the stuff that they read, which is mostly too old comics. Like they were judging 2000s X-Men based on 1974's Days of Future Past or 1976 Days of Future Past. That's the issue here.
Yeah, and it's not. I'm glad you did bring that up, is because the reason why I highlight that is it's one thing that neither the comics nor the cartoons nor the movies have really done. They haven't really tried to mix the school and the elements of having both humans and X-Men and humans and mutants have some sort of connection. Because I remember, like at one point, it was after the Judgment Day event, they had like the Phoenix Foundation where they were helping refugees. I thought that's an interesting idea. If you're gonna open Krakoa up, open it to people who are the most vulnerable, people who humans have also, because mutants aren't the only minority humans have oppressed or marginalized or hurt. So why not? If you can open Krakoa up to them, that would have definitely added some nuance. That's something that I would love to see happen in the cartoons. If they try that in the MCU, that would definitely start some conversations, because the whole tagline with X-Men has always been they fight for a world that hates and fears them. But most of the time, they're just fighting other supervillains or other mutants, and that's fine. You need that dynamic, but at the same time, you need to show them actually protecting some of the mutants the humans who hate them against, because I remember even in the first X-Men, the first episode of the X-Men cartoon from '92, like when the Sentinels attack, they literally destroy them all. The Sentinels don't seem to care much about human collateral damage, and it's usually mutants who have to protect them. Like the old X-Men cartoon did a really good job of kind of going back to that.
Yeah.
And I hope that X-Men 97 does that. I mean, we got 2 weeks left before that gets going again, but
Plus, we have 10 days exactly. Like time of
yes.
recording is 10 days.
Oh, that's even
Yeah,
better. So we're getting
I
3
know.
episodes.
So just to point this out, so you're in the US, I'm in Egypt. Today is the 20th for me already. It's still the 19th for you. That's why it's a bit tricky.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I trust me, I will be waking up extra early to watch those 3 episodes. I don't think I know how I'm gonna sleep the night before, but I'm definitely I've got my alarm set. I will be up and early to watch those episodes, and I really do hope that I know there's a lot of balancing acts that they're gonna have to follow because they have X Factor entering the picture. They got the X-Men in the past with Apocalypse, X-Men in the future with Jean, Cyclops, and Cable, bringing it all together, and then you still got Sunspot and Jubilee in the present. There's a lot of moving parts here, but I think at the end of the day, it kind of has to come back to at some point you got to start protecting other humans. You can't just
Yeah.
you can't just be fighting a villain of the week. That's what the Avengers do.
Yeah. I think, part of the X-Men that relates to what we have been discussing for a while, like how the world gets better or not, is that most of the time when the mutants win or the X-Men win and they unite the races and they become the human race again, they think in
Mhm.
terms of the human race, it's at the worst times. So it's futures controlled by Apocalypse when Apocalypse like enslaves everyone. It's
Yeah,
futures where AI wins and enslaves
yeah,
them. Like you see that in comics. I think that the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix expand on that a bit.
yeah,
You have, the Jonathan Hickman House of X and Powers of Ten, and it shows the zoos in which humans
yeah,
and mutants are put in.
yeah.
So,
They
like,
both lost.
yeah, because the idea is that they realize that they are all wrong, but they realize it too late
Yeah,
most of the time.
exactly.
And that's why, I think that Apocalypse and Sinister would work well because, Apocalypse represents the Magneto and the humans to the worst. Like
Mhm.
he is about survival of the fittest. So
Yeah,
while they are dealing with a Cameron Hodge or a Braden Creed, the main villain is always someone like Apocalypse. It's
yeah.
always someone like AI. It's the real threat that no one realizes
Mhm.
exists because they are busy fighting each other.
I think we've this whole podcast is just we've just made the case that Cameron Hodge is the perfect villain for the future X-Men movies because one, he's human. Two, he merges with technology to
And
make
magic.
himself and magic. Oh wait, who just recently became a trillionaire who talks a lot about merging humanity with technology? Who could that relate to? Let's not say his name, but it's not like that wouldn't be relevant. Like we think we've spent over an hour, and I think we're coming to the same conclusion. Cameron Hodge is the perfect villain for the X-Men MCU at the moment.
Yeah,
And but even he's not, but he hasn't been in the comics in a long time. He hasn't been relevant in a long time. The time is right for Cameron Hodge to make a comeback. I'll go on
absolutely.
record as saying that.
He should have been in Krakoa, but no one used him, and then Zeb Wells brought him for an issue in Italians. That was it.
Totally, yeah, missed opportunity.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because at some point, that certain person you were talking about, I kind of admired him in a sense because, as a human, I was
I
looking at
used to.
technology. I'm looking at innovation. I'm looking at everything that makes us better. But the thing is that over the past few years, he has been focused more on politics and less on the stuff that, made people admire him or look up to him or whatever the case may be. Because,
Mhm.
even ironically, like in the MCU, he was in the MCU at some point. He was
Yeah.
compared to Iron Man, and people love
Mhm.
Iron Man because,
Yeah.
but,
Iron Man actually makes stuff too. Mhm.
yeah, like you have to, I don't know. It's just that should have focused on the things that made everyone focus, like made everyone admire you, made everyone want to be like you. But instead, you and like the human element took over, ironically speaking, and
Yeah.
messed you up.
Yeah, and Cameron again, go bringing this back to Cameron Hodge, he would take it to an extreme. He would not because unlike you know who, Cameron Hodge actually made stuff that helped turn him into what he became. He actually tur took his humanity and said, "You know what? I don't I don't like these mutants. I don't like where humanity is right now. So if none of the humans are
Yeah.
going to do it, I'm going to upgrade myself and do everything myself because like Lex Luthor, he's driven by envy, but kind of unlike Lex Luthor, his bigotry does not is not he's not xenophobic. He just hates people who are weaker than him, and he hates being weak himself. And I think that's that kind of a motivation, which is petty. It's incredibly human, but it's also like it's the kind of thing that would make him irredeemable.
Yeah. Isn't the irony that because of that hatred, it led him to unalive himself? Like, up
Yeah,
to this day, we debate whether or not the feelings Hodge is the real deal or not, but most probably it's not. Most probably he led himself to death. And what came out of that was something, an AI that thinks that it's him. And, that
yeah,
has been explored a bit in the Phalanx Covenant mainly.
yeah,
But even I think the issue with Hellions that brings him back up mentions that. So
yeah,
it's ironic, I think.
yeah,
Like, he led to his own downfall to the point that no one recognizes him anymore.
yeah,
And he is probably not real.
yeah, yeah. It's tragic, but relevant, and it kind of is that it's like that ship of Theseus thing that we saw in WandaVision.
Yeah.
It kind of does that feels relevant, but I think if we could get a chance for Cameron Hodge to start from scratch as a human and then have him sort of evolve and become more and more unhinged, it kind of reminds me. You've seen Guardians 3, right? With the
Yeah.
High Evolutionary, like the High Evolutionary, when he starts off, he seems almost endearing, like a visionary, someone who seems to care. But as it goes on, we find out this guy, he has no redeeming values at all. Like
Yeah.
of all the, even more so than Thanos, more so than almost any other character, more so than Ultron. Like I've heard people argue that the High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is more irredeemable than Ultron, even
Yeah.
because of just what
Absolutely.
a monster he is.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, the when he starts off, he has a vision. He says, "I'm trying to do this for the universe."
Yeah.
Well, I can easily imagine someone like Cameron Hodge saying, like sitting down with another human, saying, "You see all these flaws we have. I'm trying to make it better. I'm actually putting in the work. But look at these group of people over here. They are born with superpowers. They didn't do anything to earn them. They
Yeah.
were just born a certain way. Is that fair? No. Stick with me, and I will write that. I will make it better. I will make it fair." That would be a very tempting offer for anyone, any resident of the MCU. It would be tempting even to people, watching him as a character. But again, we see this with some real world people. They have these tempting, visionary ideas, but when you see how they extrapolate them, it usually always ends with them being in charge and them being the most
Yeah.
powerful, and everyone else being essentially their uh, either their servants or sometimes worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll stop it there because I don't want to
No,
get
it's
too yeah, that'll be
Yeah, yeah.
dark.
As cynical as it is, I think that Ultron realized something that the Sentinels realized later on down the line, and it's the fact that if you want to end the human threat, you just or if you want to end all of the what's wrong with the planet, you have to end the humans as a whole.
Yeah,
So Ultron, of course, came to it from the
yeah,
general sense that humans are a problem,
yeah,
whereas the Sentinels were programmed with bigotry in mind, and they ended up wanting to kill humans as an
mhm,
aftermath,
yeah,
as a reverse of it. So because
yeah,
humans lead to the birth of units, but it's kind of funny to think about it because he's
yeah,
not wrong, and it comes down to the conversation he had with Vision at
yeah,
the end of Age of Ultron.
yeah,
Yes, humans are issues. They are controversial. They're everything good and bad about the planet, and you just
yeah.
have to deal with it.
Yeah, the thing is, I think Hodge would have even fewer excuses because at least both Vision, the Sentinels, and Ultron, they're machines. They can look at the world in a very cold way. They say, okay, Ultron can, like, especially if you look at the Ultron in from like Earth's Mightiest Heroes or the
Age of Ultron.
comics. Yeah, he just essentially says, as long as there are two humans on this planet, there will always be conflict. The only way, therefore, to
Yeah.
end conflict, we have to remove the humans. There's no emotion to it. It's a cold, hard calculation. Cameron Hodge, on the other hand, he is not a machine. He's a person. In the comics, he was born like you and me. He grew up like you and
Yeah,
me, and yet he still comes to this horrifying conclusion and that would make it even more terrifying because the High Evolutionary was an alien. Cameron Hodge, Graydon Creed,
he's a
these are
human.
human. These are human. That means that we can't
Yeah,
attribute their atrocities to simply not having any humanity because they clearly do. But they just decide, they just choose to say, look, I know what's right and wrong, but I'm just going to choose to do this
yeah,
atrocity anyway because being small, that is why I think it's more
yeah.
horrifying for someone like Graydon Creed and Cameron Hodge to become
To be the
irredeemable.
villains.
Yeah, because at least
Yeah.
Ultron, he's a machine. The Sentinels, they're just machines. You can't,
But
you
they're the
can't.
real threats, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that, that's the irony of it.
yeah,
You deal with the humans and mutants and as they are the real
mhm,
threats to one another. And in some cases, you
mhm,
do have cases made that make sense, like make these arguments make sense. But the
mhm,
real threat is AI. And when I go back just before everyone attacks me, what I mean that some cases make sense. When we go back to House of M, I think House of
mhm.
M introduces a good point, but it was never utilized
Yeah,
properly about the fear of mutants and the idea that, when you lose your mind, when you're because unlike, let's say, black people or Muslim people or anything like that,
yeah,
when you have that kind of power and you lose your mind,
yeah,
you are a threat you
yeah,
know
exactly.
so that happens. We see that with Jean, we see that with Scott and the Phoenix wife, we see that
Yeah,
with Wanda. So it introduces this element, and no one just realizes the fact that even though that's something big to discuss, it's a micro thing compared to the macro
hmm,
threat of AI of everyone else.
yeah,
And it's something I think the X-Men 97 season 1 did better than the comics when it came to the threat of AI,
yeah,
because of the way they treated Bastion. Like, I
yeah,
think that this is what separates some portrayals of the mutants in the comics and the media, and why in the
hmm,
media with 97 it's better, because they give it time to think about what's a blend between a machine and a human. It's with the 97 cartoon, it's Bastion. With something like X-Men comics, it's the Children of Tomorrow, the Children of
hmm,
the Vault, whatever you want to call
yeah.
them,
Children of the
depending
Vault.
on the
Yeah,
continuity or discussion. The Children of the Vault are just the Children of Tomorrow, but whatever.
yeah,
Like, they are just exist in two different universes, but it's crazy. But so that's the idea you have to deal with. And that's what I loved at the ending. Like, Scott and Jean especially were hurt by Bastion more than anyone else
yeah,
there. And they were the first to choose the fact that as I said earlier, in order for humanity to be better, each one of us has to make himself better.
yeah,
It's not the job of, Jack to make Anas better. Anas has to make himself better.
yeah,
And that's what they realized. So the first step they take as the X-Men is
yeah,
that Scott decides that he is gonna let Bastion live,
yeah,
because Bastion is a human. He is the next step of human
yeah,
evolution or mutant evolution.
hmm,
And same thing, like, then Jean did so, and then shenanigans continue to happen because
yeah,
it's X-Men, it's the finale. You have to
yeah.
lead for season 2.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but
So,
yeah,
but that gives me hope, honestly.
mm,
Like, if, like, the way to end this discussion on this note, I think that this for me
okay.
gives me hope that the X-Men will do the villains right when it comes to the MC.
I hope so.
Hopefully they do with the comics as well. And
Yeah.
do you have anything else to say about that?
I think we've both, we've convinced you, this discussion has convinced me that Cameron Hodge is due for a comeback.
Absolutely.
Let's make, yeah, we can be sure to add his face to the thumbnail for this podcast, because I think that would be, that's,
Absolutely.
yes, because the time is right. I mean, Bastion, he already had his time with X-Men 97 season 1. I think, I don't know what they're going to have planned for seasons 3 and 4, but him coming back into the fold would
Yeah.
definitely, liven things up, both in the comics as well, because he hasn't been relevant in the comics except for the Hellions, and that probably wasn't even him.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like,
we
for
can
the
move on if you
comics,
want. Yeah, yeah,
nah, no worries. For the comics, they just adapted his two major plots in a few episodes of 97.
mhm,
And it's Zero Tolerance and Second Coming.
mhm, yeah. There's definitely
Yep.
some, there's definitely
Missed
some room to
opportunities.
grow. Yeah, missed opportunities. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But so
So, in the
you want to
time we
move
have
on?
left,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
don't we discuss some Witchblade, since I've finally finished the series?
Okay, yeah. Do you want
And,
to talk about the
I finished the
damage?
reboot as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Want to talk about the
You
damage
know,
of the ending?
for I don't think it's the damage. I think that so Witchblade as a whole is a complicated franchise. I enjoyed 90% of
Hmm.
it, but I
Yeah.
think that they wanted to reboot when they did Artifacts,
Yes, they did.
and that affected them horribly because they didn't know what to do. And some elements of Artifact itself is written poorly. Like you went
Hmm.
from Jackie and Sarah trying to protect their daughter to them killing their daughter
Yeah.
for whatever
That's
reason.
yeah.
So like
That's when it kind of was over for me. That's kind of when I knew this series had run its course.
yeah, like at that point it was crazy. And then there was the point, like when Artifact continued, that Jackie rebuilt the universe wrong and we can reset things and do things right, but
Hmm.
they just didn't. And and so like
Yeah.
by the time they didn't, Tim Seeley came to the fold. He was doing his own thing with Witchblade, which didn't work because at the time most people, like including me, reading this like in 2 nights, I want to see the resolution of what's happening with Artifacts,
Hmm.
but you just don't get a resolution. What you get is maybe like you get some emotional beats that are relevant and well, and
Hmm.
in a sense, you feel the trauma that Sarah's gone through and Jack as well, between
Yeah.
losing their daughter because their daughter had to die for the universe to be born.
Hmm.
But at the same time, one had to choose to manipulate the whole universe to have his daughter exist again, while
Hmm.
the other one has to live on with the fact that she killed her own daughter. Like there is some emotional like trauma there that you barely explored, and you just started to throw things at the wall and nothing sticks, to the point that
Yeah.
you need it, like in order to sabotage the reboot. What you like, in my opinion, what needed to happen was that they fight the darkness because Jackie is manipulating reality, and
Hmm.
they set it back the way it was. That would have been well, and you
Yeah.
can continue doing stuff from there. But what happened is that you just ignored that completely and you threw things at the wall that didn't stick. So the fix for the reboot was another reboot, and the other reboot was a soft reboot that didn't work. So you had to hard reboot
Yeah.
with the current run that we have now.
Yeah. Once I think once they tried to essentially walk back things like Sarah having a family and the idea of her and Jackie trying to deal with the ramifications, it just kind of this kind of it's like the writers got scared of letting the series grow too much, and they wanted to sort of bring it back to a certain status quo, which we've seen in comics before. But there's a right way to do that and a wrong
Yeah,
way to do that, and I don't they chose the wrong way. And I feels shortly
yeah,
after that, I felt like the Witchblade comics in general just kind of like they ended with a whimper, not a bang. There was nothing really
yeah,
spectacular about them, and it was disappointing. But at the same time, I kind of like it went longer than most people thought it would. Like for it to go over 100 issues,
yeah. It went for
and
23 years.
yeah,
23 years.
it definitely left its mark. I mean, I still really wish that
Yeah,
I wish that it had ended differently. I wish that it had
yeah,
it had there's a lot I would have liked to see it expand on, but
yeah,
it just kind of it's we've seen it's the same thing. It's kind of like what happens with Ultimate. Like the writers sort of get backed into write themselves into a
yeah.
corner, and they try to write out of it in the dumbest way possible.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny because you didn't want the character to age and you wanted to continue. And the next
Yeah,
thing you did was that you ended the universe,
yeah, that's a
for
little extreme.
like for a brief period, they tried to let it continue without acknowledging Sarah with like the volume 2. But then, it didn't go anywhere. So you had to hard reboot anyway. But so I think the irony at most is that by the end, you realize that this series has like what Ron Mars did was retroactively make it that the series has been going for real time, and that
Hmm.
Sarah had been the Witchblade for 20 years. And you had to have her move on. So, she's back with Gleason. She is moving
Hmm.
on from everything. She's old. She's ready to settle down. And, you could have, honestly, for me, you could have done that after Artifacts with just, she's there, with Jackie, or maybe Gleason, I don't know, with her
Hmm.
daughter, and you could end it there and start over. You know, Or maybe even, you could have moved on with Danny because, Danny has existed for a while.
Hmm.
She is at
Hmm.
least a decade younger than Sarah. So, you can do something with her, but you didn't end up doing anything with her post artifacts at all.
Yeah, Danny was fun too, but she was no Sarah. Like one of my favorite scenes. I don't know if you remember this scene. Like Danny and Sarah are on a rooftop drinking together, and I think like
Yeah.
Sarah gives Danny some of her flasks. And she goes, "Oh, what do you got in there? Paint thinner?" And Sarah says to her something like, "Just because you are a girl doesn't mean you have to drink like one." That is like the most Sarah
Yeah.
Pazzini. I remember that scene. That scene made me laugh out loud when I first read it.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Witchblade
Yeah.
scenes
I
of all
think
time.
they were also discussing the Angelus being
Yeah.
in a relationship with the Witchblade at the time,
Yeah.
like one of the hosts, and she was like, "Don't get any ideas." Of course, the writers got ideas when it came to the
Of course
reboot.
they did. Yeah. Trust me,
Yeah,
I
but like,
wrote fan fiction. I could tell you all about those ideas.
yeah, it's kind of funny, I think the current series is trying to avoid the issues that the original series as a whole fell for, or the traps that it fell for.
Mhm,
Mostly because, as I said, the series was peak when it became about Sarah's life, with Hope,
mhm,
with Jackie, with
mhm,
Leeson, with like all of that stuff. And
mhm.
the current series is focused on that. Of course, it's
Yeah,
different because, that's a younger Sarah. So we're
yeah,
dealing with,
and it
the
traumatized Sarah
mental
too.
impacts. Yeah. I think they both have similar traumas, but one of
Yeah,
them never got explored, because
yeah,
both of them grew up orphaned, and, one joined the police academy and it was hard for her. The other one
mhm,
joined the military as well, which made things worse. But,
yeah,
maybe add in the sexuality. I think maybe the sexuality also affected her to some
yeah,
extent because, one of them is bisexual, maybe.
yeah.
But,
Maybe. It's not like that again, fan
yeah,
fiction writers
I
will
don't know.
figure it out.
It's not about maybe. It's just because, the first one, like the current iteration, her father accepted her being that, and, we see her like not caring about anyone. So I don't know if she is one of those people who would struggle with like identity
Mhm.
based on the fact that she is bisexual, since she doesn't give a shit about anyone.
I think some of that is the trauma talking. That is something I do like about the current series. And after having kept up, we're up to issue 22 now. And in that time, we've seen her connect with Ian Nottingham. We've seen uh, her
Jackie,
Jackie, although Jack she doesn't really hasn't developed much of a relationship with Jackie yet. So that
we
they
see
have
it in the darkness. They are
yeah
connected. Like we see it in the darkness comic
yeah
where he's dreaming about
yeah
her and some
yeah
stuff.
yeah, but they haven't really delved into that too much yet.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's coming down the line. But now we've got
Jake.
Aphrodite 9. Yeah, Jake just showed up too. So there's a whole lot of potential connections that are haven't been explored yet. But the fact that what I think what makes this new series work so well is we know from the beginning that Sarah has a lot of baggage and she's not dealing with it in a healthy way. That was before
Mhm.
she got the Witchblade. Now
Yeah,
she has the Witchblade. It's making everything harder. It's making some things easier though, and it's helping her and it's hurting her at the same time. And it's kind of
yeah,
it's after at this point in the series, she's kind of accepted the fact that this is a burden she has to shoulder. She's going to do her best, but at the same time, she is still not addressing some of the problems were
she
making
has.
her that were making her miserable before the Witchblade entered her life.
Yeah,
And at some point that's going to come to a head. And whenever it does, I think it's going to be. I don't know if how long it'll take for them to get to that point, but
yeah,
the Margaret Burnett is taking the right approach, and I hope that it continues. I do want to hope. I don't know if Burnett's going to actually be at Comic-Con this year. If so, I'm going to try to meet her. Maybe I'll try to get an autograph for you. But
that would be awesome.
if if not, we'll just have to wait and see. So
Yeah.
and you have anything else on Witchblade?
And so for me, I think that, I don't know what I'm expecting from the series. I just want to ask you, what do you think of the issues that were introduced, like with her and Jake? Because to me, like, it's one thing to talk about, let's say, Scott and Jean, who we know grow up in the future and choose to be lovers and everything like that
Yeah.
happen. Whereas with Jake and Sarah and Witchblade, the current continuity, it's being driven as a prophecy that I don't know if
Yes.
I want it to happen or not. So what do you think of that?
Sarah's never been good with prophecy in any like if you've read the original series, you know how Sarah thinks of prophecy. She does not like if you tell her something is prophesized, her first instinct is to do the exact opposite. So
Yeah,
based
for
again,
Jake.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly how this new series is going to deal with that. But if this Sarah is anything like the Sarah from the other series, she's not going to embrace that prophecy the same way. She might try to avoid it. Maybe they'll still find a way to come together in a way that's different. But
Maybe.
where the way it stands now, I think Sarah is going to actively try not to be with Jake, but at the same time, that might end up pushing her to be with him, which is, but we've seen that happen before.
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen like the first thing that comes to mind is Hawkman and Hawkgirl. They are very much linked, tied together, and they
true.
keep kind of getting drawn together. So maybe that I don't know which route they're going to take. I just know that Sarah's character in both series is the one. If you want her to not do something, tell her it's destiny.
Yeah, I think it is kind of funny to see that in the original series. So clearly, what happened like up until issue 800 is not 800, 100. I mean,
100. Yeah.
was the fact that Ron Mars was joking with Patrick Gleason, so he introduced Patrick Gleason in the comics, like
Yeah.
the Sarah's boyfriend or whatever. But I think that at some point they like he decided to completely cast aside the original cast because
Mhm.
they were not created by him and focus on the cast that he created. Because
Mhm.
with issue 100, you kill Jake and you focus on Patrick and
Yeah.
you build the new cast from there. You introduce
Yeah.
Danny, the new captain, and everything. So
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I'm interested to see if they're gonna take like the direction with Jake that they did with Patrick in the original
Mhm.
comics. Whereas like you have seen, it wasn't a prophecy then, but Sarah knows that he's a good man, but she doesn't know if settling for a good man or
Yeah.
settling at all is her thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like against destiny with
Yeah.
destiny,
She
but
doesn't
she
think he's
ends
a
up,
good person. Yeah.
yeah, but she ends up settling for him. Of course, at the time, the bad influence on her, if we can call it that, is
Yeah.
Jack. And, she killed Jack after she had an affair with him. But,
Yeah.
what, like, she had an affair with him.
Hey.
She was leaning on the worst side of
Yeah.
everything. But, you had to end the series on a good note. And,
I guess so.
that was something they chose to do. So I think let's see how this goes when it comes to, the new series. Of course, like the new series is leaning more at this point towards, the bad side and the good side being
Yeah.
Aphrodite versus Jake. And,
Mhm.
depending on how you write that, that can be topical,
Yeah.
especially because, unlike the original comic, when you're dealing with a straight characters, so it's
Mhm.
easy to discuss bad apples versus good apples versus,
Yeah.
depicting homosexual relationships, but versus
Yeah.
heterosexual relationships. So, like,
Just imagine if the end game
we'll
is
see how it goes.
Aphrodite ends up with Jake. Yeah,
I
that would
mean,
be a
Jake,
real slap.
yeah, knowing Jake, his luck is the worst. Like,
Yeah.
think about like he's like the way things went from him. Like, he settled for the Sarah Pizzini lot because he couldn't get Sarah, and by the end of things, he couldn't get neither of them,
Mhm.
and he had to commit suicide in the end to protect everyone.
Yeah.
So, like, he's the guy that came out losing everything.
Yeah. They have there's no I don't know, he needs to have a better ending or at least a better fate in
Yeah.
this new series because yeah, he didn't deserve what happened to him in the original. So,
I
we'll see.
absolutely think that like when Morse was originally thinking of the idea, that's just my theory. He was
Mhm.
definitely thinking that Gleason was Jake throughout the whole thing. But then, whether he had to replace the characters with his own because, it's
Mhm.
image and the rise of the characters and all of
Mhm.
that. Or maybe because, he decided to run with the joke a little bit longer when it came
Mhm.
to Patrick Gleason, that things changed. But honestly, like, if you're gonna like, this series so far has been streamlining like itself based on the original series, and it's paralleling it in a lot of ways. So I'm fairly sure that we will deal with like Jake's prophecy to some extent in the same way that Sarah dealt with Patrick Gleason in the original
Mhm.
comics, where is he good for me, am I good for him, or that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
how it ends, that's obviously for the long run to tell.
Yeah. There's plenty of time. It's only been 22 issues. There's a long ways to go.
Yeah, and the series has been phenomenal. So I don't think that it will end anytime soon. It's not
I
like
hope
the
so.
the second volume.
Oh, again, the 27 reboot. Do not get me started. That was
Yeah,
a fever
it
dream
wasn't
that is
really a
best forgotten.
reboot.
No,
If you think about it, it wasn't really a reboot. It was just a continuation of what happened to the Witchblade after she left Sarah.
that makes it worse. That made it worse.
Maybe I don't know. I've never like I know of it. I know some of the stuff about it, but I
Hmm.
didn't actually go through reading it because
Don't. You're
I
better
better read
off.
something that I enjoy than force myself to read something
Yeah.
like I even forced myself. I dare say I forced myself to finish the latter part of Witchblade, like Sarah's
Hmm.
story, because like there was good stuff in there, but there was also weird shenanigans that I didn't really care for.
Hmm.
I was interested to see the universe like ending, hopefully on a happy note, especially because I knew some aspects of the ending, but I was still underwhelmed. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I knew
Consider
that
yourself
the
lucky.
series would end with, yeah, I knew that the series would end with, Sarah settling down and all of that stuff. So I thought that maybe she'll have hope back. Maybe, things are gonna go well, but they didn't. And, Jackie died weirdly. Like
Hmm.
everything happened was weird. But yeah, like I think overall I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed the run, and hopefully the current one doesn't lose its way the way that one does. And it learns
Hopefully.
from the mistakes of the previous run. I think it
Hopefully.
did like some aspects when it comes to especially the 90s and
Hmm.
Ian's relationship with who is his wife in the new continuity, but was a kid that he raised that ended up
Hmm.
falling in love with him. Like it's learning, as I just said, from the old comics. But let's
Hmm.
see. Do you have anything on mind regarding anything before we wrap things up?
Other than we did get, yeah, we mentioned the comics. I think
Yeah,
we now know they're going to be launching.
we didn't.
All three issues are going to be launching in on October 7th. We got some preview, but not a whole lot of other insights. And we
Philip Kennedy Johnson.
yeah, Philip Kennedy Johnson. I don't know if you want to place that link in the description for this episode, but yeah, it does look like Marvel's going to try to make this last more than 2 years, like the Ultimate Universe. But again, I still have reservations about. I'm going to wait for the first issues to come out before I make a judgment. But my here's the one thing that I don't want to see them do is rely on shock value to sell these books, because that will not last at all. We've seen we've seen what happens with the previous Ultimate Universe when they try to just do something. If it's just if they're only doing a story because it can't be done in the mainline comics, that's a terrible reason to do a story. I mean, that's what If is
Yep.
for. We whatever they're going to do with Midnight, whether X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, have a vision and don't rely on shock value. Don't rely on killing characters you couldn't get away with killing in the mainline comics, because that's a stupid idea. Just you got a new universe, build it from scratch, do something other than what Ultimate ended up doing,
Yeah,
or Earth
absolutely.
3 too.
Yeah. I think that what Philip Kennedy Johnson said is promising, but we'll see how things go. So what he said that is that on October 7th, the only three releases of Marvel will be the Midnight books, the three of them together, and that
Mhm.
Marvel originally, and not originally, officially tasked them to map the first 5 years. So we know that the creative teams, at least the writers, are
Mhm.
stuck with these comics for 5 years, like 5 years
Mhm.
ongoing, granted. Whether or not that like ends up being the case, we'll wait and see, I guess. But for now, they're planning that. Philip Kennedy Johnson said that he is already like in his mind mapped beyond the 5 years. So like the 5 years are just
I
the
love
start for
that.
him. But
Yeah.
let's see how it goes. I know I
I,
don't trust Marvel these days, but the creative teams I do, especially
yeah.
like Philip and Hickman. I love them too, but like Ben has his ups and downs for me.
Mhm.
But Philip and Hickman, I just love.
Okay. Yeah. Just before anyone takes those plans at face value, just remember when Chris Claremont was given X-Men Forever, he had plans that went on longer, but it got cut short early because of poor sales.
Yeah, but I
So
don't think the like Midnight will have poor sales. I mean, Ultimates, although it's ending right now, like it still rocks when it comes to sales. It's the only
yeah,
thing Marvel is doing that is selling.
yeah. But yeah, the fact that they're still canceling it, not a good sign. But maybe Midnight will be different. again,
Yeah,
I know it keeps coming back to what happened with the other Ultimate Universes, where
absolutely.
if you're just gonna rely on like they killed Captain America, they killed Spider-Man, they killed pretty much all the X-Men. Again, please don't do that a third time. Like literally do literally anything else for Midnight. Don't you can do all sorts of crazy ideas, just not that. That idea has been done twice already and it's terrible. So that's just all I want to say about Midnight.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see how everything goes. Hopefully, like I'm just hoping for the best. I'm the Nightcrawler of the show in that
Yeah.
regards, or maybe the Saint
Yeah.
Walker if we're comparing
Yeah.
it to a Green Lantern or
Yeah.
a Lantern person. So
Well,
yeah,
you're younger than me, so the cynicism hasn't taken root. So hopefully it doesn't.
hopefully it doesn't.
But yeah, we'll find out later this year. We'll find out. Hopefully, we'll also have hopefully once X Men '97 airs, we'll have more to talk about. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think Midnight was the last thing I wanted to touch on before we
sure.
wrapped up. Did you have anything else?
Nothing really. I honestly I forgot about Midnight, although it's it's an important topic to discuss. So thank you for
Yeah,
bringing it up. So
no
yeah,
problem.
yeah. With that being said, we'll bring this episode to an end, and we'll see you all next time.
All right.
Peace.
Take care and stay safe, everyone.